Discover the amazing and touching transformation of wives after Spartan's hidden acts of defeat. Rain hammered the roof as Helen sorted through the attic's clutter, each drop blending with the pulse of her unease. She was a nurse, a caretaker, yet in her home she felt like a ghost. Her husband, Mike, had once reveled in his glory days, leading the Spartans to triumph. But now he labored beneath the shadow of past victories, trapped in a cycle of work and disappointment. Trying to share her feelings had become a futile exercise. Mike brushed her off, leaving her to wonder if her worth was buried beneath his forgotten ambitions. Her identity eroded under the weight of motherhood and his disinterest. As she rifled through memories, dust kicked up like the frustration she carried. Then she spotted an old trunk, the wood worn yet sturdy, containing remnants of her father's life. With a shaky breath, she opened it, her heart racing. Inside were letters she'd never seen, each one revealing a hidden side of her father's valor. Not the shining heroics, but the quiet acts of kindness that changed lives without fanfare. "You are defined not by what others see," he had written, "but by what you quietly accomplish." Heat surged through her. Was she to be remembered as merely a wife, a support system for Mike? Inside her, a battle raged. She felt lost in a marriage built on nostalgia. "Am I just a shadow?" she whispered, guilt mingling with aspiration. She was pulled between embracing her family's legacy and the suffocating expectation of being just a wife. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the weeks passed, the letters didn't just haunt her. They sparked something. The women around town began to emerge from their domestic confines, emboldened by shared experiences. They gathered and exchanged stories, each revelation revealing how deeply they had buried their desires under the expectations of their husbands' narratives. Helen felt an electric energy in their discussions, transforming her unease into determination. She envisioned a future where she could reclaim her identity. Yet every whispered hope was met with the ghost of Mike's indifference. When she finally confronted him that night, the air turned thick. "Mike, I need you to see me. I'm tired of being an afterthought." Each word carried the weight of unspoken resentment, yet he recoiled. Eyes narrowed, defenses raised, he responded with a tight silence that felt like an accusation. Was it too late for them, or was it her fear of being rejected that made her voice quiver? The relentless tension gnawed at her, leaving her muscles taut. She desired a partner, a teammate, but often felt like an opponent in a game where she had to fight for recognition. The night grew darker, reflections of her father's courage now taunting her. A call arrived hours later, shattering the fragile semblance of hope she'd built. Anxiety seized her, doubt creeping back in. The parallel lives of heroism and ambition surged, leaving her at the precipice of despair. Would she possess the strength to confront not only her past, but also the uncertain future? The letters challenged her. Maybe they held the courage to guide her, but would it be enough to tackle the chaos awaiting her? The following morning, Helen woke with a jolt, her mind racing through fragments of dreams woven from the previous evening's turmoil. Bursting with a mixture of fear and resolve, she dressed quickly, her hands trembling slightly as she fumbled with buttons and zippers. Today marked an inflection point. After weeks of battling shadows, she was determined to step into the light. Sipping her coffee, Helen found herself staring out the window, the pouring rain now a gentle patter against the glass. The rhythmic sound mirrored the steady pulse of her heart. What would happen if she truly decided to reclaim her voice? Would Mike see her as a partner again, or was she destined to remain a mere bystander in their lives? After a deep breath, she grabbed a worn journal that had accompanied her through nursing school. It was filled with reflections and aspirations, and it was time to add a new chapter. Placing the journal on the kitchen table, she let the first stroke of the pen flow across the page, writing down her goals, fears, and countless check boxes that urged her to embrace her authentic self. "I am not just a shadow," she wrote, fiercely underlined. "I am Helen, a nurse, a mother, and a woman of strength." The act of writing felt cathartic, yet daunting. She acknowledged the scars left behind by Mike's indifference, but something ancient in her was awakening. The bravery illustrated in her father's letters ignited a fire that long lay dormant. That momentum grew and pushed her to envision an initiative in their small town, a community health awareness campaign. It could highlight the importance of preventative care, bridging both her professional expertise and her personal longing for connection. After a morning of planning fueled by exhilaration, Helen steeled herself and reached for her phone. It trembled in her palm as she dialed the number for the local community center. As she set the wheels in motion for her ideas, a profound realization washed over her. She was not merely seeking validation from Mike anymore. She was crafting her identity apart from him, as a woman who could forge paths rather than follow shadows. That evening, Mike returned home, his face drawn and tired, the remnants of defeat still shadowing his features. He was still a man straddling the line between past glories and present despair, yet Helen felt a shift within herself. The conversation from the night before echoed, and instead of retreating when he appeared distant, she approached him. "Mike," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor edging her nerves, "I initiated a health campaign today at the community center." He looked up, curiosity peeking through his exhaustion, but instead of the supportive enthusiasm she craved, his brow furrowed. "You want to spend more time on this when we're barely holding it together?" Helen felt the sting of disappointment momentarily pierce her resolve, but she stood her ground. "We're not holding it together because I've been silent. I won't ignore my ambitions for us to become what we once were. This is about me, too." Silence hung heavy in the room, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Helen's heart raced as she waited for his response, the precariousness of her future teetering in the balance. "Why now?" he finally asked, his eyes searching hers. "What's changed?" It dawned on her that she couldn't turn back to the woman who was hesitant to fly. "I'm changing, Mike. I'm tired of being just a support system. I want to matter, to myself." As uncertainty flickered in his eyes, Helen grasped the severity of her choice. She was choosing to stand in her power, and whether he recognized it or not, she would not dim her light for someone else's comfort any longer. But would her courage galvanize a positive response or further fracture their already fragile bond? As Mike remained silent, Helen's thoughts spiraled into the unknown, leaving her anxious for his next words. Her future felt entwined in the unraveling present. Would he support her newfound ambition, or would he pull her back into the shadows she was desperate to escape? The next morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds that had shadowed Helen's days. As she brewed her coffee, its aromatic warmth filled her small kitchen with a sense of possibility, chasing away the remnants of yesterday's doubts. The stirring confidence settled deep within her, replacing anxiety with a newfound determination. Helen's mind replayed her conversation with Mike, but rather than diving into the whirlpool of what-ifs, she focused on the clarity that had emerged from that exchange. Each moment in the kitchen felt stable, unlike the fragile atmosphere that hung between them. Today was not about him. It was about what she could do to advance her vision. She scooped up her journal and scribbled an outline for her health initiative, envisioning workshops and sessions that would not only educate but also inspire her community. As she wrote, a smattering of ideas revealed itself: nutrition classes, mindfulness meditation groups, and health screenings. Each proposal resonated with a piece of her own journey, an opportunity to blend her professional skill as a nurse with her passion for human connection. This was her path toward reinventing both her personal and professional identity. With her plans taking shape, Helen turned towards an imminent challenge: how to rally support for her campaign. She knew reaching out to local businesses and healthcare providers was essential. Each call would be another step in reclaiming her ownership of her future. Yet a swell of doubt crept in. Would they take her seriously? Would Mike? The ringing phone snapped her from her thoughts. It was Marissa, her close friend and a fellow nurse. After exchanging pleasantries, Helen felt the hesitation tighten in her chest. This was the moment to share her endeavor, to seek help without fear of judgment. "Marissa," she said, her voice faltering slightly, "I'm starting a health initiative to promote preventative care. I'd love for you to be a part of it." "What a fantastic idea, Helen!" Marissa's enthusiasm shone through the line, revitalizing Helen's fading confidence. "I'd be happy to help. Have you thought of how we could set this up?" In that moment, a flood of ideas emerged. Together, they brainstormed logistical details, solidifying Helen's vision into something tangible. Marissa offered to connect her with local pharmacies and even a chef known for healthy recipes. Every idea generated between them felt like a validation of Helen's resolve. Each shared laughter lightening the weight she had carried alone for too long. Yet, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, anxiety began to creep into her thoughts again. Mike would return home soon, and their earlier conversation loomed like a heavy cloud. Would he support her, or would he again only see her ambition as a diversion? When he walked through the door, the sights and sounds of the day still fresh in her mind, Helen braced herself. A simple greeting felt monumental. A part of her expected him to ask about her day, but he shuffled in, barely making eye contact. "Did you go through with it?" he asked, his tone neutral. "I did," she replied, urging her voice to stay steady. "Marissa is on board." "Great," he muttered, distraction evident in his demeanor. Helen felt the room constrict around her, the air thick with unvoiced opinions and unresolved tensions. Rather than retreating, an unexpected force surged within her. She had taken a stand for herself. She had a direction. "This isn't just about the campaign, Mike. It's about rediscovering who I am outside of us." His gaze finally met hers, confusion mingling with apprehension. "And what if that means our lives change?" The question reverberated within her, not just a reflection of their relationship, but of the risks that came with personal growth. Helen took a breath, calibrating her resolve. "I believe that I can nurture my passions and still contribute to our family. It doesn't have to be one or the other." She realized then that she wasn't just fighting for her initiative or against their estrangement. She was fighting for her own identity. The time had come to confront the reality of their relationship. Would Mike embrace her transformation, or would it deepen the chasm between them? As uncertainty veiled their remaining moments together, Helen's heart raced. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her, propelling her toward an impending confrontation. What was at stake was more than just her ambition. It was a chance to redefine who she could be as a partner and a person. And as she prepared for whatever storm awaited her, stillness echoed the undeniable truth. This time, she wouldn't retreat. The choice was clear: stand apart or stand together. Would Mike recognize her strength, or would the divide grow wider, challenging everything they had known? Helen sat on the edge of her bed, mentally preparing for the unpredictable. The weight of the evening's conversation still clung to her like a second skin. and the shadows in the corners of the room mingled ominously with her thoughts. Could she push Mike to understand her right now? Or would it take more time, more patience, to bridge the gap left by their unspoken fears? This time, she refused to simply react. Instead, she'd examine her feelings and intentions with clarity, noting each nuance. Her journal lay open on her nightstand, the beginning strokes of her health initiative etched onto the pages, a physical reminder of her aspirations. Placing her hand on the cover, she found comfort in its solidity, an anchor amidst the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Determined to strengthen both her initiative and her personal resolve, Helen committed to another day of outreach. It was Saturday, the perfect day for catching local businesses that might want to engage in her vision. She could hear the soft morning breeze whisper through the trees outside, urging her to take the first step. Before leaving, she took a moment to meditate, her breath flowing steadily as she focused on the intentions behind her project. This wasn't merely about building a health program, it was about creating a legacy that could influence the lives of countless families, including her own, even if that journey soared into uncharted territories. In the bustling downtown area, Helen stopped at a cafe, a local hotspot where folks lingered over health-conscious meals. The manager, Vanessa, was someone Helen had known for years through various community events. Sitting down at the counter, Helen felt a rush of familiarity wash over her, providing a sense of belonging amidst uncertainty. "Hey, Helen, what's new?" Vanessa's bright smile illuminated the cafe, but Helen sensed her excitement masking the more profound expectations that loomed behind it. "I have an idea to discuss," Helen began, choosing each word with deliberation. "A health initiative focused on preventative care. I want to partner with local businesses for workshops and community education." Vanessa's eyebrows rose in surprise, a hint of skepticism flickering across her face. "That sounds interesting, but it's a big undertaking." "Exactly. That's why I'm here," Helen replied, her voice steadying as she leaned in. "I know that we can make a real impact together. I really value your input and resources." As they exchanged ideas, Helen noted how engaging in this dialogue fueled her confidence. It wasn't just about initiating her project, it was about asserting her right to be a leader in her community. Each positive response from Vanessa chipped away at her lingering doubt. However, out of the corner of her mind, she remained aware of Mike's absence, the tension left unresolved between them. As soon as they parted, Helen felt the pang of uncertainty return. Each step felt heavier. Later that evening, exhaustion washed over her as her weary body sank back into the couch. The door opened, creaking slightly, announcing Mike's return. She recognized the familiar gait, but noticed the subdued energy that surrounded him. "Hey," she greeted softly, observing the tension still knotted between them. "Hey," he replied, shuffling into the room, his expression unreadable. Mustering the courage she had built throughout the day, Helen reminded herself of the transformation she'd begun to embrace. She pressed onward, knowing it was vital to confront the silence. "How do you feel about my plans for the health initiative?" His eyebrows pushed together, uncertainty tangled in his response. "Do you think this is the right time? I mean, we have so much going on as it is. What if it takes you away from home?" His words pierced through her resolve, and she wrestled with the familiar urge to retreat. Yet within her, a voice urged her forward. "It is about time," she replied emphatically, "not just for me, but for all of us. I need you to see that this is part of who I am becoming." The room fell silent. Helen could see the battle in his eyes, struggling to reconcile the fear of losing his partner with the realization that he was on the precipice of witnessing her evolution. And in that charged moment, they stood on the edge of conflicting desires and hopes for the future. As the air thickened around them, both felt the unspoken words swirling, heavy with potential. Whether he would join her on this journey or remain tethered in fear was uncertain. Yet for Helen, the precarious moment held the promise of clarity. A real transformation lay at their door, one that could challenge everything they both had known about commitment and identity. Just then, she realized that her own strength depended on understanding this next pivotal step. The next conversation could decide it all. Would they embrace the challenge together, or would fear pull them apart? Helen woke the next morning with a resolve that burned brighter than the sunlight filtering through her curtains. As the remnants of her conversation with Mike replayed in her mind, she noted that the tension they shared had not dissipated. It had merely shifted, waiting for the right moment to unleash either doubt or hope. She slipped out of bed, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Today was not just another Saturday. It was an opportunity for a deeper exploration of her leadership potential. After all, every great journey begins with a first step, but it is often the follow-through that defines its path. Determined to build momentum, Helen picked up her journal, flipping through the colorful sketches and ideas that poured out during her brainstorming sessions. Each page radiated her aspiration and ambition. Her fingers brushed against a particular entry that caught her attention: how to engage passive partners. She hesitated, her mind swirling with memories of Mike's skepticism. It was time to examine not just her initiative, but also how her personal relationships could both uplift and hinder her ambitions. As she prepared for the day, she resolved that her outreach today would focus not just on health, but also on fostering relationships that could bridge gaps in understanding. She needed allies who could grasp the larger vision, and in some way, she needed to extend that same support to Mike. She started her day visiting a local herbal shop to see if they would be interested in collaborating on her wellness program. The owner, Mark, a friendly face she had known from yoga classes, welcomed her with curiosity. "Helen, what brings you by?" His welcoming smile brought warmth to her resolve. "I'm here to share an idea that might benefit both our communities," she began, excitement bubbling up within her. "I want to combine our resources for workshops aimed at preventative health." Mark listened intently, his brow furrowing in consideration, and for a brief moment he embodied the skepticism she felt echoing in Mike's words. "That's ambitious. What if people don't engage?" Her heart raced. There it was, the question that echoed her own fears. "What if they do?" she countered, emboldened by her earlier reflections. This isn't just about sharing knowledge, it's about changing lives and creating a ripple effect. The conversation flowed easily after that initial tension. Ideas flew between them, growing more robust with every exchange. By the time she left, a plan began to crystallize. A potential workshop that integrated natural healing techniques into broader health education. As Helen walked back through the vibrant streets, she reflected on the synergy she had created with Mark. It was exhilarating and filled her with a newfound belief that others could see her vision, just as she began to envision it herself. Yet, as she turned the key in her front door, her heart sank at the thought of her next interaction with Mike. Would he still see her through the lens of doubt? Would he recognize her determination as strength, or would it feel like pushing against a wall? There was a delicate balance to strike, and suddenly Helen felt weary. Gathering hope from her morning success, she decided that discussing her workshop with Mike wasn't merely about getting his approval. It was a chance to nurture their partnership. It wasn't just about her journey. As she progressed, she needed to invite him into her world, modeling a form of vulnerability that could transform fear into partnership. Later, as they sat down for dinner, Helen felt a familiar knot tightening in her stomach. She had the opportunity to broach her feelings again, to potentially shift the energy in the room. I talked to Mark about hosting workshops to promote health education, she began, watching Mike closely for any glimmer of interest. And, he replied cautiously, his fork pausing midair, as if weighing his response. I think we could make a real connection, something impactful, and it wouldn't take me away from home, it could bring us closer, she offered, her hopeful tone laced with sincerity. His eyes narrowed, articulating his internal battle. It sounds like it could be a lot of work. Yes, it will, but it's a labor of love. I want us to share this journey, and I hope we can find a way forward together. Her heart pounded as she awaited his response, the moment hanging delicately in the air, thick with tension. Mike's expression betrayed no certainty, yet the wheels of thought were visibly turning in his mind. I just want to make sure we're considering everything, he began, but the door to their dialogue had nudged open, and Helen could feel a shift, perhaps the start of a genuine connection among their uncertainties. In that fleeting moment of possibility, Helen realized this wasn't just about her. It was also about how to weave their individual aspirations into a shared narrative. But a daunting question loomed ahead. How would she ensure that his fears transformed into support rather than remain an anchor dragging her down? As the silence filled the spaces between them once more, the stakes heightened. This conversation would prove pivotal, holding the potential for both personal and shared transformation. The next morning dawned with a sense of weight that felt heavier than the existence of doubt. Helen awoke to the chatter of birds outside, their natural rhythm entirely contrasting with the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. It was clear now, her pursuit of personal growth had become an intricate dance requiring poise and the willingness to engage in uncertain spaces. While still in her pajamas, she turned to her trusty journal. Each line she etched contained a fragment of her aspirations and insights. Today's entry would need to encapsulate her conversation with Mike and the churning anticipation that accompanied her new project. Engagement comes not just from the idea, but from perseverance, she wrote, feeling a surge of empowerment. Stepping into her day, Helen opted not for her usual cafe, but for a small booth at the local community center. She considered it a fresh space, one that held promise. As she settled in, the subtle hum of conversations around her intertwined with her resolve. There was inspiration everywhere waiting to be uncovered. She just needed to be open to it. With an empty cup of tea in front of her, she focused on drafting a detailed proposal for her workshops. The earlier excitement of her discussion with Mark invigorated her writing. She crafted how the workshops would extend knowledge on preventative measures, emphasizing emotional wellness in conjunction with physical health. Sharing the vision felt liberating, as if she were slowly peeling away the layers of hesitation. An unexpected call interrupted her flow, a familiar voice she had not heard in years. It was her college professor, Dr. Allen, a key figure in Helen's life who often encouraged her to think outside the box. Their conversation shifted from small talk to Helen's current professional endeavors. I want to know how you're navigating these new ideas. Are you facing any resistance? Dr. Allen's question ricocheted within her. It left her momentarily speechless, as if the words had opened a window she thought was shut tight. Yes, she had been facing resistance, not just from Mike, but also from the inherent doubt that lingered within her. The truth felt liberating, and she articulated her thoughts with clarity. I'm realizing that I can't let fear dictate my pace, Helen said, her voice carrying a sense of determination she hadn't felt before. But it's complicated when personal relationships intertwine with your dreams. The advice that followed from Dr. Allen was both poignant and internalized deeply. Navigating relationships often requires a balance between vulnerability and steadfastness. Sometimes being vulnerable can break down walls. By the time she finished her conversation, Helen felt invigorated and refreshed. Each piece of advice revitalized her purpose, and she jotted down notes. The autonomous shift within her brought a newfound clarity. She needed to tackle the looming uncertainty about Mike head-on, framed by the insights gained from her conversation. Returning home, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation at the thought of confronting Mike's skepticism once more. She knew it was critical not to let the seed of doubt take root, but more importantly, she needed to tap into empathy while navigating this conversation. She could not simply dismiss his concerns. Rather, she needed to elevate the discourse, finding a shared vision amidst their diverging outlooks. As she entered the kitchen, she found Mike absorbed in the news. She observed him, recognizing the contemplative furrow in his brows. There was a tension in the air that crackled like electricity. This time, Helen would approach the conversation differently. She would invite him into her thought process, a collaborative effort rather than just a pitch for his approval. "Mike," she started, her tone steady, "can we talk about the workshops again? I want to show you how they could work for both of us." His eyes met hers, an inkling of interest flickering across his face. "Sure, but I still have my reservations," he replied, a thread of concern interwoven into his response. Bracing herself for the discussion that would come, Helen's pulse quickened, both a reaction to the dialogue ahead and the possibility of transformation, not just for her, but as a partnership. The stakes of this discussion were high, and as she embraced the moment, she wondered if this could be the pivotal turning point, the moment where their aspirations might converge. But would the discussion end in mutual understanding, or would it deepen the rift? The thought lingered, casting a suspenseful shadow as they began to exchange ideas. The initial silence between them hung heavy, a delicate balance of anticipation and anxiety. Helen felt the need to break through it, but rather than rushing in with solutions, she took a breath, grounding herself in the principles she had vacillated between just hours before. "Mike, I understand your reservations," she said slowly, "but this project isn't just about me pushing an idea. It's about us. I want you to see the potential here, not just what the workshops could accomplish individually, but what they could mean for both of us as partners." Her tone was firm yet inviting, a clear shift from the more combative exchanges they'd had in the past. Mike's brow knitted tighter, uncertainty gnawing at the edges of his perspective. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. "I still don't see how this aligns with our existing commitments. You've been talking about expanding for months, and I worry it's too much too soon." Helen leaned forward, encouraged by the openness in his hesitance. "I get that. Sometimes, though, growth feels chaotic before it settles into something beautiful. Remember my thesis project? It wasn't smooth sailing either. It took hours, days even, of work and negotiation. But it shaped me into a professional who's competent and passionate about health advocacy. This could do the same for us." She desperately wanted him to engage with her vision, to understand that her ambition did not threaten their partnership. Rather, it amplified it. "What if we start small?" she proposed, seeking middle ground. "Maybe we could host a couple of trial workshops together and gauge the community's response. If it doesn't resonate, we can pivot. But if it does, think about what that means for us." His fingers drummed softly against his forearms, an unconscious gesture reflecting inner conflict. Helen could sense the gears in his mind turning. Would he allow the fear of potential failure to stifle her aspirations? "What about the time commitment?" he asked, still assessing her proposition. "With your practice already so full, how will you manage?" "I know it involves sacrifice, but trusting my instincts and proceeding could unlock something vibrant between us." She hesitated, then added, "Growth always demands something from us, but if we embrace that responsibility, we can nurture our dreams together." As Helen spoke, she realized she was not solely advocating for her project. She was sharing a piece of herself with him, her hopes, her struggles, the passion that propelled her. It stirred a recognition within her, a revelation that every interaction with Mike had the power to either uplift or undermine that very essence she was striving to cultivate. "What if we start small?" she proposed, seeking middle ground. "Maybe we could host a couple of trial workshops together and gauge the community's response. If it doesn't resonate, we can pivot. But if it does, think about what that means for us." His fingers drummed softly against his forearms, an unconscious gesture reflecting inner conflict. Helen could sense the gears in his mind turning. Would he allow the fear of potential failure to stifle her aspirations? "What about the time commitment?" he asked, still assessing her proposition. "With your practice already so full, how will you manage?" "I know it involves sacrifice, but trusting my instincts and proceeding could unlock something vibrant between us." She hesitated, then added, "Growth always demands something from us. But if we embrace that responsibility, we can nurture our dreams together." As Helen spoke, she realized she was not solely advocating for her project. She was sharing a piece of herself with him, her hopes, her struggles, the passion that propelled her. It stirred a recognition within her, a revelation that every interaction with Mike had the power to either uplift or undermine that very essence she was striving to cultivate. Mike's expression began to soften, the weight of her vulnerability breaking through his defenses. "You've always been the passionate one, Helen," he confessed. "That energy can be contagious, I'll admit, but I have to see a realistic path forward." Her heart raced, encouraged. "Then let's create a practical plan together. I can draft a few outlines, and we can refine them during the week. If we both believe there's merit, then we've got something to stand behind." His head tilted slightly, an unmistakable shift in his demeanor. "I want you to succeed, Helen, but partnership doesn't mean you're alone in carrying the burden. Are you asking me to buy in?" "Yes," she said, determination lacing her voice. "I'm asking you to be my partner in this, as you've always been in everything meaningful." Silence resurfaced, yet this time it felt different, more like a pause for contemplation than a barrier. Helen managed to maintain eye contact, awaiting his response, feeling both vulnerable and empowered. Finally, he sighed, the tension in his shoulders leveling. "Okay, let's try the trial workshops, but we need checkpoints along the way." The relief flooded in, grounding her commitment in newfound security. "Absolutely, we'll create a pathway." As they began to sketch out ideas, Helen felt a blend of excitement and responsibility grow within her, recognizing the stakes of their collaborative journey. Yet beneath the enthusiasm, a lingering fear whispered in her mind, urging her to navigate this new territory with caution. Could this partnership withstand the pressure of their ambitions? The thought settled uncomfortably, waiting to be answered. What if the very act of pursuing her passion threatened the foundations of their connection? With the details evolving, Helen realized one truth. She had embarked on a journey where every step toward her ambitions would not only shape her future, but test the very nature of their relationship as well. Would she succeed in balancing love and aspirations, or would the tension morph into an impending storm? And just then, the burgeoning possibilities loomed ahead, promising intrigue as they brainstormed, with Helen's heart pounding, the realization making her pulse quicken, for she could feel a showdown on the horizon, one that he could not foresee. The room buzzed with a newfound energy as Helen and Mike dove into their planning. Sketches sprawled across papers, while ideas flourished, twisting and intertwining between the two of them. She felt the excitement coursing through her veins like adrenaline, sparking a unique tide of creativity. Yet just beneath the surface, a current of doubt churned, a psychological undercurrent she couldn't quite wrestle into submission. As they drafted their schedules, balancing existing commitments with the promise of these workshops, Helen couldn't help but reflect on her own journey. The personal growth she had fought so hard to cultivate was beginning to unfold in tandem with the potential of this venture. But it was daunting. With every outline they refined and each listing of resources they compiled, the weight of responsibility pressed heavier upon her shoulders. The stakes had risen. Failure would not only mean letting herself down, but might also fracture the partnership she had fought so hard to solidify. "Maybe we can incorporate feedback mechanisms," Helen suggested, tapping her pen against the notepad, an idea sparking brighter. "It'll not only help us gauge interest, but also show that we're committed to improving based on what participants say." "That makes sense," Mike replied, his expression thoughtful. "But we have to be prepared for criticism, Helen, and constructively accept it." There was an edge of caution woven into his words, caution that echoed Helen's own inner worries. Their eyes locked momentarily, both lost in the breath of what lay ahead. What did it mean to be receptive to criticism when vulnerability was already knocking at their doors? In that instant, Helen understood that the risks extended beyond their professional pursuits. They were on the brink of personal revelations that could either fortify their bond or magnify its fractures. The next few days flowed like a whirlwind. Helen found herself deeply engrossed in peculiar hours of brainstorming, administrative work, and facilitating meetings with local stakeholders. The passion that had ignited her these past months manifested in her every action and conversation. Yet, as she entered her office, the familiar warmth that had once enveloped her began to shift. Piles of paperwork had begun to accumulate as project plans spilled into her solo professional life. The line was blurring, and she felt the struggle within herself. How to uphold her responsibilities while embarking on an uncertain venture. When Mike gently pressed her during one of their late-night sessions about her well-being, probing for signs of burnout, Helen hesitated. The reflection in his eyes urged honesty, but she found herself grappling with apprehension about how voicing her stress might shatter the delicate equilibrium they had just formed. "I'm fine," she assured, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But the reality was far from fine. She was feeling overwhelmed, sitting on a tightrope between ambition and anxiety. However, through their continued dialogue, Mike began to reveal layers of his support that had previously been veiled by his own reservations. His willingness to step up whenever he sensed her fatigue began to nurture a newfound trust between them, inviting her to lean in rather than retreat. As the workshops approached, a prominent feeling began to rise within Helen, an acute awareness of what was at stake. If everything panned out, they could become a formidable team, radiant with potential. But that would leave her vulnerable to disappointment, which settled uncomfortably in her chest. Their relationship would be put to the test, straddling the precarious threshold between shared dreams and personal fears. The night before their first workshop, Helen sat alone in her office, thoughts swirling chaotically. She opened her laptop, half-heartedly scrolling through her presentations before pausing, suddenly struck by a realization. The moment she had been anticipating and fearing had finally arrived. She wasn't just about to embark on a professional endeavor. She was standing on the brink of a profound personal evolution. And with that, the unsettling thought crept back in. Would she emerge stronger from this tumultuous process, or would she witness the unraveling of her bond with Mike just as it had begun to blossom? With her heart pounding, she turned away from the screen. The room felt stifling, the air thick with anticipation. A decision loomed before her, pulsating with urgency. A decision that could alter the trajectory of everything she had worked toward, both professionally and personally. Tomorrow would be the tipping point. She could either seize the momentum or risk losing herself in the chaos. With a determined breath, she closed her laptop. The quiet moment became a canvas for her uncertainties. Through all the contrasts of doubt and excitement, one truth rang clear. Tomorrow would reveal whether love could withstand the weight of ambition, and she would soon know if she had the resolve to navigate the storm ahead. The scales were tipping, and Helen felt the tension simmering, knowing that the dawn would not only bring opportunities, but perhaps the confrontation she both craved and dreaded. As dawn broke, Helen woke to the soft hum of her alarm clock, a familiar cadence that felt more like a distant war drum echoing in her chest. Today was the day. She rose, steeling herself against the urgency of her racing thoughts, each one a reminder of what lay ahead, a combination of hope and dread tightly woven together. The preparations began, but each step was punctuated by an undercurrent of doubt. She organized her materials, each item an emblem of her painstaking efforts and aspirations. Yet, the more she set out her plans, the more she felt the gnawing sensation of inadequacy, the voices in her mind whispering that perhaps all these lofty ideals were destined to collapse under scrutiny. She could feel Mike's supportive presence linger in her mind as she returned to the various workshop setups they had discussed. Mentally, she rehearsed the opening lines of her presentation, confronting the question pressing against the back of her mind. What if she faltered in front of the participants? But beneath that fear lay a flicker of conviction. While every apprehension felt amplified, so did her capacity for resilience. As she arrived at the venue, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Other facilitators were setting up, laughter and chatter contrasting with her internal struggle. In a moment of vulnerability, she stepped outside to breathe deeply, letting the brisk air course through her. "You can do this," she murmured, though the affirmation felt hollow. In that instant, the weight of time spent preparing coalesced into a singular question surrounding her real motivation. What was she truly risking? A workshop, her partnership with Mike, or the development of her own identity through this process? Gathering her resolve, she re-entered the venue, each step a declaration to herself. The room filled gradually, and her heart quickened as familiar faces greeted her. Mike arrived shortly after, a reassuring smile lighting up his features, a solace in the increasingly overwhelming tide of participants. As the workshop unfolded, tensions morphed into engagement. Participants came alive, sharing their insights and experiences. It was intoxicating, but also daunting. The feedback mechanisms they planned took shape as hands shot up, inquiries flowing freely. Each response not only revealed the desires of the attendees, but exposed a little more of herself, tying her to both the audience and to Mike, who was visibly enjoying the interaction. When the time came to address feedback, hesitation pricked at her. The thought of critiques brought her doubts spiraling back. Would they see her as unprepared? Would her words carry the weight she so desperately wanted to impart? Yet, as Mike revisited the whiteboard and noted participants' suggestions, something shifted within her. The vulnerability she feared transformed into a cautious embrace of opportunity. If discomfort meant growth, she was ready to explore that territory. The hours flew by, filled with dialogue that prompted genuine introspection and collective growth. By the end of the workshop, Helen felt slightly unmoored, torn between the excitement of achievement and the inevitable confrontation with the very doubts that had clouded her mind beforehand. The swirling worries were still there, but they now felt less like shackles and more like whispers nudging her toward further exploration. As the crowd dispersed, she and Mike exchanged a glance, an unspoken acknowledgement of what they had accomplished together. The perils they faced were alive and palpable. While she had stepped into her own as a facilitator, would they be able to sustain this connection beyond just today? Helen could sense another challenge on the horizon, the need to integrate all this newfound clarity into their shared vision. "That went really well," Mike remarked, pride evident in his voice. "Yeah, it did. I was surprised," she responded, both anticipating the next step and the confrontation of the emerging tension between them, the deeper examination of their partnership and the aspirations they shared. Tomorrow would not only hold potential for more than just workshops, it would demand deliberation on how to engage with the paths branching before them, each with its own set of challenges. And so, as they began to pack up, Helen's mind swirled with questions about acceptance, acknowledgement, and the future. What might it mean to fully commit, to trust in their collaborative vision together? The moment had come again to confront their evolving relationship, and with it, the haunting realization that they stood at another crossroads of ambition and emotional depth. As Helen awoke the following Monday, the sunlight streamed through her window with an affectionate warmth, illuminating the remnants of yesterday's triumph. The first workshop had exceeded her expectations, a wildfire of passion igniting her sense of purpose. Yet, as the exhilaration ebbed, she was met with an unsettling awareness, the need to confront the latent tensions with Mike. Yesterday had unveiled new dimensions of their partnership, carving deeper paths into their relationships, yet unacknowledged was the silence that had marred her joy. This morning, she found herself reflecting not only on their collaborative success, but also on how it would define their relationship moving forward. The coffee brewed as she mulled over a detailed plan for the next workshop. Ideas flowed freely, entwined with excitement about the future. But it was vital for her to check in with Mike to ensure that their burgeoning partnership was rooted in mutual understanding rather than unspoken worries. With her steaming cup in hand, she stepped across the hall to find him. Mike was sitting at the kitchen table, a simmer of anxiety underlying the apparent calm as he reviewed notes from the day before. "Hey," she started gently, hoping to coax him from his thoughts. "Hey," he replied, glancing up, a cautious smile unfurling on his face. There was warmth in his eyes, but Helen recognized the tension could still be simmering beneath the surface. "Can we talk about yesterday? It felt incredible to connect with everyone," she ventured, allowing her excitement to interlace with a sincere inquiry. The shift in atmosphere was palpable. She could sense Mike weighing his response. "It did feel good, but it also feels like a lot." His voice held a hesitance that was impossible to ignore. "Like what?" she pressed gently, determined to draw out the truths yearning to be released. "Like there'll be more pressure on you, on us," he admitted, eyes darting to the notepad filled with observations and ideas. "What if it ends up being more than we anticipated?" Helen's heart raced. This was the conversation she knew was coming, grounded in vulnerability. "Mike, I recognize that pressure, but I also understand that the journey is worth the effort. I don't want us to feel overwhelmed. I want our collaboration to mean something. We could amplify each other's strengths." His furrowed brow relaxed only slightly, a flicker of contemplation crossing his features. "I appreciate that, but what happens when the workshop becomes your primary focus? When your other responsibilities take a backseat?" A wave of clarity washed over her. This wasn't simply about the workshops and personal ambitions. It was about cultivating a strong foundation for their relationship. Helen took a breath, reflecting on the evolution of her identity. "I'm okay with prioritizing my ambitions, but I don't want you to feel like I'm abandoning you or our family. You matter, Mike. We are a team, and that means addressing concerns together." A tentative silence hung between them, the intimacy of the moment laying bare the fear of losing one another. "Promise I won't overlook my responsibilities," she added softly. "I want to integrate this into our lives without losing what we have built together." His eyes softened, revealing the vulnerability behind his guard, a spark of recognition that she hoped would lead them into deeper alignment. "Let's figure out how to support each other." He said evenly. They began brainstorming ideas together, a spontaneous outpouring of vibrant possibilities emerging as they wove their aspirations into actionable commitments. Helen could sense the walls between their ambitions beginning to crumble, a transformative energy sparking between them as they shared collaborative intensity. That evening, as Helen prepared dinner, she reflected on this critical shift, how their individual growth could nurture something even more profound together. Each conversation, Every challenge faced was an opportunity to reinforce the bond they shared, one that now thrived on open dialogue. "Mike, how would you feel about co-hosting the next workshop?" she asked casually while chopping vegetables, gauging his response. His gaze flicked over in surprise, accompanied by the dawning realization in his eyes. "You'd want me to?" "Absolutely. You've contributed so much already. Why not bring your perspective into it?" After a pause, a hesitant smile crept onto his lips. "I'd like that. It'd be nice to be more directly involved." As dinner progressed, they delved into planning new themes together, ideas fluctuating between them like a playful dance of creativity. Each suggestion, each laugh stitched them closer, intertwining their individual strengths into a shared vision. The following week, their second workshop arrived. Set in the community center, the room was vibrant, bustling with eager participants. In partnering with Mike, they both felt an unexpected confidence surge forward. Teaching and sharing together brought to life an energy that married their ambitions. With every interaction, every question answered, their connection deepened. By the end, as Helen surveyed the room filled with gratitude, a profound sense of fulfillment anchored her. She realized they had not only created opportunities for their community, but had forged a stronger partnership in the process. Sitting across from Mike in the quiet aftermath, Helen felt an overwhelming rush of pride. "We did it," she breathed, allowing herself to fully absorb the success forged in their collaboration. The smile he returned was sincere, a reflection of mutual admiration and respect. They were navigating a storm together, now grounded in shared commitment instead of fear of individual pursuits. "Here's to many more," he said, raising an imaginary glass, and in that moment they knew they had consciously chosen each other, rooting their personal and professional ambitions in collaboration and support. And as the weeks transited toward a transformative growth, Helen embraced this newfound understanding. Recognizing fulfillment emerged not only from personal ambition, but from the exquisite balance between supporting aspirations and forging resilient partnerships. The act of conquering challenges had illuminated paths neither had envisioned alone. In recognizing each element, their intertwined journeys became a testament to the power of partnership, a real achievement rooted in empowerment and love. Now, it was time for growth to spill beyond their immediate lives, sowing seeds of inspiration that would reverberate in their community as they stepped into their roles as advocates for health and well-being, both independent and united. As Helen gazed at the bright future ahead, she knew that the journey into uncharted territories was just beginning, a harmonious symphony echoing resilience through every stride they took alongside each other. So don't wait even one more second to support these transformative narratives. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is critical. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's inspire change together.